just went into the murder-suicide house on my street. Nothing had been touched since the bodies were removed nearly a year ago. Not even the mattress where the bodies sat decomposing for 6 weeks. Most of the neighbors on our street are friendly. We look out for each other. We text, chat, and say hello when we see one another, etc. It's a sweet feeling of community. In the past, there had only been one household that wasn't interested in being friendly with any of us. An elderly woman, mid-70s, we'll call her Maud, and her son, mid-50s, we'll call him Don. My partner and I had attempted to wave and say hello, only to be met with cold stares from them. Once my dog managed to slip out of his collar and run through their yard while Maud was out getting the mail. The glare I received from her while trying to catch the dog left me with a feeling hard to shake. You know that unexpected gut punch feeling when you become the object of a stranger's misery and hatred? Anyways, we learned quickly to stay out of her way. We barely ever saw Dawn. The blinds were always closed tight. They rarely left the house, and no one ever visited them. I last saw either of them at the beginning of August in 2021. Dawn was getting the mail while wearing blue latex gloves, which I thought was weird. In early October, one of our other neighbors reached out to ask if we had seen Maud or Dawn recently. We had not. Suddenly, we were all too aware that their grass was now over 3 feet tall, and that the mailbox was so full that it couldn't close anymore, and papers were literally spilling out into the street. Obviously, a welfare check was called. The neighbor who had put herself in charge of directly communicating with the police called shortly after the check and told us to sit down. Maud and Dawn were both dead and had been dead for 6 to 8 weeks. It appeared to be a murder-suicide, the assumption being that he killed her. I paced the rest of the day in front of my living room windows, watching the crime scene van pull up, the officers come in and out of the front door, taking breaks to somberly chat in the front yard. Then after a few hours, out came the body bags. This smell was something I had never experienced before and will never forget. The following weeks, I thought of how many times I had walked by that house with my son and dog, while 2 bodies were laying there rotting. I stayed up for hours a few nights trying to find out anything I could. Nothing. No news stories. No crime reports. Absolutely nothing. So I dug into Maud's history. All I could find was that she had been buried in a field north of a town dedicated to the quote-unquote unclaimed. I kept a close watch on the house and researched the legal proceedings it would go through since there was no kin. Looking at that house had always felt cold and sad before, but now it felt dark too. Haunted. I became obsessed with Maud's story with no way of getting answers. Her house just staring back at me blankly every single day. Back in the spring, my young son and I were out catching fireflies. We would stand still, waiting for one to blink, and run in that direction. It took us up and down the street multiple times. I know this is such a small, silly detail, but that night, I stared into Maud's yards for minutes at a time, waiting to see a firefly, and I swear not a single firefly blinked over there. I became so bothered by it that I stared longer, sure that if I just stared long enough, I would see one. But nothing. Complete stillness and darkness. I told my husband that I hoped someone would buy the property and knock the house down. No one had any business living there now. Today, around a year after they died, the doors were open and people I hadn't seen before were in and out, carrying bag after bag of what looked like junk. I texted a neighbor and asked for intel. He said the house and all of its belongings had been collectively sold and bought at an auction 2 weeks ago. These were the new owners, probably getting ready to flip the house. I typically don't shove myself into situations, but I had just spent way too much time thinking about Maud, wondering who she was, why she was so angry, imagining what strange life her and her son had been living, and what their last moments were like. I knew I'd regret it forever if I didn't ask them what it was like inside. So I did, and they invited me in. One step into the front door and more puzzle pieces fell into place. This was a hoarder home. There was barely anywhere to put my feet. Stacks on stacks of old fine china, pots and pans, vintage books and records, knickknacks and countless boxes filled with God knows what, from floor to ceiling, I kid you not. The woman who had led me inside said, "The mattress where it happened is still here. Do you want to see it?" Slightly afraid that she'd think I was completely demented, but far more curious, I said that, of course, I wanted to see it. She led me to a bedroom through piles and leaning stacks of junk. She walked into a cramped, small bedroom with a twin-sized bed and pulled the blankets back. If you've seen what decomposition stains look like, then you can imagine what I saw. After processing, I asked, "So this is where Maud was found?" "I think they were both in here. I'm trying to piece it all together. I haven't even started in the other corner bedroom, but I'm hoping it'll give me some answers. I'll be here organizing and sorting over the next few days. You're welcome to join me if you'd like." I told her that I would love nothing more, so after all of these months, I'm excited to have a chance to get some answers to everything I've been wondering, to get a sense of who Maud was, to possibly find a way to honor what seems to have been a very sad life, to maybe get some clues into why her son murdered her. Her son, who I found out shortly after seeing the house, was a deeply troubled sex offender who was charged by the FBI for CP and soliciting a minor in 2014, and to hopefully do it without any bad energy attaching itself to me. I do keep wondering, why, if this was a murder-suicide, did the police not do a deeper investigation? Is it because there was no kin to care? Anyone have insight? Part 2, Murder-Suicide House Update. I spent hours in that house yesterday. Hours, it's hard to even know where to begin. I walked out of my house, crossed the street, and went up the path to the front door where the woman I had previously talked with, Gwen, sat trying to Google the value of a piece of pottery that she had found. Find something good? I'm not sure. It's hard to know what's real and what isn't with this stuff. I walked past her and let myself in, praising her for the amount of junk she had managed to remove since my last time in the house. Mostly, though, I was trying to not seem rude as I made my way to the back bedrooms to immediately get to work. I walked past Maud's room, where the mattress covered in decomposed body fluids had been leaned up against the wall so no one had to look at it anymore. Of course, that didn't stop the smell. I looked into a bedroom I hadn't seen last time. It had obviously been Dawn's. Hundreds of books and men's shoes and hats and clothes covered the floor, almost climbing to the ceiling in some areas. "I think I'm just going to get started in here sorting through these bookshelves," Gwen said. "Yeah, sure, the smell isn't as bad in there." I poked around the room and made my way to a bathroom door in the corner. It was hard to tell at first because there were so many things on the floor, but I realized there was a discoloration of the wood floors near the bathroom. I stepped back, took a wider look, and said, "This is where Dawn died." If you recall, previously, Gwen had thought that they had both been found dead in Maud's room, but she looked, made a face, and said, "I think you're right." We attempted to clear the area and in doing so, uncovered pieces of cloth and towels and a pair of shoes turned rock hard with the long since dried dark brown red fluid. As we moved things aside, it became apparent that the dark markings in the floor made their way nearly 6 feet into the room from the bathroom door. Dawn. Well, I guess they died in separate rooms after all. And this definitely looks like the mess of a suicide. I shook it off and went to the floor of ceiling bookshelves that were next to a small bed and got to work with the trash bags for junk and totes for book sorting. This was truly one of the strangest experiences of my life. I sorted through what seemed to be Dawn's very few sentimental items. One Christmas letter from an old high school friend, postmarked years ago. Old printed film from what appeared to be his childhood. pornography, one stuffed animal elephant, his ID, social security card, vaccination card, and glasses. Most concerning, multiple pairs of incredibly high quality binoculars. Gwen and I went to both windows in the room to see what views he had. One looked at the side of another neighbor's house, the home of a family with 2 young girls, probably between the ages of 8 to 12. Gwen said Don did everyone a favor by taking care of himself. I felt sick and told her I'm now terrified of whoever I don't know in our neighborhood, anyone who might want my small son. Again, we shook it off and got back to work. I pulled playing cards out of the nearly 20 different books he had been in the middle of reading. He had a deck on the shelf next to his bed to use as bookmarks. Some books were fantasy, some history, some romance, some classics. Apparently he wasn't picky about his literature. After filling one large tote full of books, I sat there taking it all in, looking around the room, trying to get into Don's headspace a little. I noticed a calendar still hanging on the wall. It was turned to September 2021. If you recall, the last time I had seen either of them was early August 2021, and it had been mentioned that Maud had been dead for some time, 6 to 8 weeks. The stains and the smell in her room certainly hinted at as much. They were found October 6, 2021, but the dried blood in Dawn's room, the lack of strong smell. Gwen, did you find anything else in Maud's room? Any other clues as to how she died? I didn't. I looked too. Looked at the walls for splatter, at the mattress for bullet holes. Nothing. I'm suddenly wondering, what if he didn't kill Maud? What if she died of natural causes in her room, and he left her in there dead for a few weeks before deciding to take his own life in here? It would explain why it smells so much worse in her room. She would have had more time to rot. We ran the hypothesis by the older Southern couple who had actually bought the home. Well, I suppose he could have been playing with taking her social security checks, Roger mentioned. Another house we bought, the wife had put her dead husband in the pond in the backyard and hadn't reported it so she could keep getting his checks. They never did recover his body. Oh, I'm sorry. Is this something you all do often? I laughed, but was genuinely curious. The wife laughed too. We do buy estates often, but we don't do this often. Referring to the unattended deaths, the smell, and the insane level of hoarding, I'm sure. I think that's all I have the mental capacity for tonight. But hopefully I'll be able to write up more tomorrow. And hopefully with a police report in hand so we can have some certain answers. I won't be able to stop thinking about this until I have Maud and Dawn's autopsy reports. Hey guys, just want to take a quick moment to say thank you for all the likes, comments, and subscribes. It really means a lot to me as a new YouTuber. If you enjoyed the video, please consider hitting that subscribe button and the notification bell because I am planning on posting at least 100 videos this year and keeping an active pace. Although with all the support I've been seeing, I'm actually thinking of trying to hit 200 or 300 this year. Lastly, if you have a true scary story or a paranormal experience that you want me to read here in my channel, go ahead and write it and email it to me at drhaunts@gmail.com, along with a note of how you wish to be credited.